All right, the scaffolding is down. It's really great to see the whole building, and as Bill Stavali, who is the big honcho of this whole event, our custodian of this great space, Mr. Stavali said, it looked like we'd never been there, which is exactly what we wanted. So they came, they took their stuff, they left. For those of you who haven't been around for a while, we have been inside a darkness here, and it's gone, it's gone, it's gone, and it's just so wonderful. We're happy. We're very happy today. And thus, we have to begin thinking about what all this means. And some of what it means is what Grace read from the 2nd Chronicles. It appears that churches are always repairing their buildings. They've been doing it for a long time. I have a feeling that we will keep doing it for a long time. So it's a great day to think about our envelope, our walls, our moment. I'm going to call 2015 the year of our great content, because this will be the first time for a long time that we're completed a big phase of work and not starting up the next phase yet. Do read the brief report from the Capital Campaign that's on your chair. It will tell you where we are. And basically, we're now moving out of the congregational phase of this campaign, which has been very successful, raised about $1.2 million, into the community phase of the campaign, where we hope that our ministry, which is probably about a 1/3 us congregation, but really 2/3 to the community, will be supported by the community when we do the next phases, which will be a lift and a roof. So that's on its way. But we're in an interesting time of preparing for that next phase right now. So a brief history of this building. First, let me thank once again John D. Rockefeller's initial gift of $40,000 to get this building going, and especially the way he leveraged that money with a national letter writing campaign in order to match his big money at that time to thousands of smaller gifts, which made this happen. Secondly, let me name that time was the beginning of what was called institutional ministry. And it's a funny word for it, but what it meant was, hey, churches, get out of the parochial and get into the world. And we now call this the community ministry orientation of liberal Protestantism. But institutional ministry was what they called it then, and we were founded in that movement, and we haven't strayed very far from it, ever. Outside the walls has been our motto. But if you read Howard's remembrance carefully, the second text, it's very interesting what he was saying. He really wasn't saying outside the walls at all, and I quote, "From a nourished and great soul, great things can be wrought in the world." In other words, inside and outside, we're always connected. The distortion that we have seen, sometimes historically, in institutional or community ministry, in which we care for others and not so much for ourselves, even think that might be parochial or bad or puny, it's not really there for us. We need to review that very seriously at this time. Second, let me show you that we used to have more property on this block. Everybody remember that? We need to never forget how much property we have already lost. It's rather a trend for us. Now that NYU is gobbling up territory, we have become a part of that gobble. We got eaten. I tried to find the article in The Villager that I wrote a long time ago called NYU Too Big Not to Fail, but apparently someone's stolen it from the archive, and I can't find it. They must have thought that was a good idea. I also recall vividly working with Peter Larman, pastor here during the decade of the 90s, during the Great Gobble. He was wise beyond his years, Peter was, in talking about what community ministry means when the community around you is changing. NYU's gobble NYU's grandiosity, NYU's growth has changed our community. So in that mini historical context of institutional ministry, community ministry, I think sophisticated community ministry, and our changing community, let me critique community ministry. Obviously, I'm a part of it, we're a part of it, our whole movement is a part of it. The thorn in the side of community ministry and institutional ministry, its forebears, is paternalism. Let me define that paternalism. It can be sensed every time you have an inside and an outside. Them, us. It's a sneaky kind of binary, but when it's there, you really have to watch out, because the next thing you're going to find yourself saying is those people outside our walls. It invokes an us and them. It can be sensed whenever we work with immigrants, which we've done not just in this era, but formally as a community that was founded in an immigrant situation. Whenever we work with immigrants as though we were the hosts and they were the guests. Welcome, we say. It implies an us and them. It can be sensed when we talk about those people in Black Lives Matter. You've heard it, right? Those people really need our help. Watch out, watch out. And we are here on guard against that kind of paternalism. We have been for a long time. We value what is inside our walls and what is outside our walls. We don't value either of them as though one was better than the others. We want the doors to be open in so many ways and to swing in and out. We want the air to circulate here. Listen to Mahatma Gandhi. Quote, "I do not want my house walled in on all sides and my windows shut or stuffed. I want the culture of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible." What a great version of circulating air, fresh energy, not the stale energy of liberal Protestantism helping them, the outsiders. Or hear it in the new slogan that also takes on the tiredness of the 60s distortion of community ministry. It says, "Be the change you want to see." Do you hear how whole that is? Be the change you want to see. Don't help others get better or improve themselves. Be the change you want to see. The women's movement put it as the personal is the political. Howard said, "It's amazing what nourished souls can do to save a world." When you're just saving the world out of some kind of fumes, guess what happens to the world? It doesn't get saved. So John D. Rockefeller, Howard Moody, and Peter Larman link arms and ideas when it comes to community ministry. Community ministry is community within the community. Community within the community, a kind of spiral. And we do know that there is a horrifying parochialism in much of religion, as though God were here to protect us and ours and our way and our kind of people. God is here to protect us and us. That's what it means to have a God large enough to be worthy of worshiping. So here we are, standing in a constantly repaired and restored building, constantly repairing and restoring our own sense of ourselves and our world. We're most confused, I think, in this year of our content, 2015, about who our community is now and next. How big and global dare we make our reach? Because that is also our neighbor's university question. Do we want to be small and parochial and act like just what we can manage? I think the crisis of our time says absolutely not. You've got to do more than you can manage and be more than you can manage. So guess what? Guess who our community is? It's NYU. It's NYU. They're everywhere. They're in this air conditioning. NYU is our community. When Grace and I started talking about doing this service, we were sure we were going to be much more introspective, right? Scaffolding's down, we'll see what's revealed and exposed about ourselves, we'll look at ourselves. And I immediately said, well, first of all, we can't do it that way because of the paternalism. We have to look inside and outside at the same time. And so all of a sudden, instead of looking in here at our community in a new way, now that the scaffolding is down, I said, oh my God. We have a new community. We are increasingly connected to them as an institution, and yes, they do remain a threat to us on our borders. When we argue for more freedom in border crossing for immigrants, maybe we need to listen in to what we mean. Calling NYU an enemy, which many of us do, is just stupid. If not, a direct contradiction to our theology of community and institutional ministry. If not a direct contradiction to the moral, practical theology in which we have lived and moved and had our being for a long time. As Lynn Brown, Executive Vice President at NYU for Community Affairs, constantly reminds me, she never misses a chance. It's a shame, Donna, that Judson is so white, with NYU here bringing the world to your doorstep. I usually get a good lunch out of it, but that's the lecture. And she's right. The biggest thing that has happened on Thompson Street in this last decade is not our scaffolding, magnificent as it was. The biggest thing that happened was the building of the Spiritual Life Center directly across the street. That building gathers 79 NYU chaplains, of which I am one, and it, as a building, makes us talk to each other. The great majority of these chaplains are crazy conservative. I mean, crazy conservative, and mostly Asian. Their two matters are not linked. The second largest group is an extraordinary group of 11 imams representing every ribbon in Islamic thought. The third largest group is 8 rabbis, again, wildly conservative and wildly radical, and we do not discuss Israel-Palestine ever in this group. There is a strong consensus about if somebody even starts to make an announcement about something that might be happening on campus in that area, 5 people go sit on the person who's making the announcement. The 2 liberal Protestants in the group are me and the Episcopalian chaplain who is on maternity leave. Not related, but it's wild. It is a conversation about religion that I cannot tell you how privileged I feel to be having. And I'm not saying all of NYU is conservative in that way, it's not, but religion on campus is very conservative. So maybe we have work to do in our community. What an idea. We did try to have our table again this year, and I think we all just ran out of energy to do the table because the table wasn't doing what the table was supposed to do. Because I think there's a pre-recognition that has to come about that NYU is our community, and increasingly we are NYU. So while thinking about this scaffolding going down and thinking about revelation and exposure and Judson and who we are, pops into my inbox something from Ministry Matters, a very good megachurch newsletter, which I get just to make sure I know what they're up to. And the article by Ron Edmondson, the link will be in the sermon, and it's titled, "When Your Church No Longer Reflects Your Community." And it argues that one of three things is going to happen, and we've seen it happen a gazillion times. A congregation does get some choice, but once the community has changed, you get less and less choice. You can become more like the community. That is happening at Judson. We increasingly have more people from NYU who don't walk in and get disrespected for being part of the great behemoth next door. Secondly, you can leave the community, and many churches do. That is the pattern of urban churches, is to start in one community and move to another community. Or you can slowly die in the community, right? Become more like the community, slowly die, or leave. So what do I hope for? I hope we can get over our hatred for NYU. That is not called ministry. You don't hate the people with whom you work. NYU is a gobbling conglomerate, and frankly, I hope we can get over all our hates. Aren't we here for that? To get over all our hates? Why else would we be here? Why else? I hope we can get over our hatred for NYU and learn to be a partner with those who would love to know we are here. Note the meditation quote, "The common yellowthroat may be the most beautiful bird nobody knows." What if they knew that we were a church that is a little bit different and committed to making a larger difference? What if they knew that we too struggle with issues of size and growth and impact, just like they do? What if they knew that we were reflective people, willing to think about religion? What if they knew that they could have a spiritual home in the middle of this wild and wacky neighborhood? What if they knew that we were viscerally anti-censorship because of our Baptist belief in soul freedom? What if they knew that, as opposed to thinking that just because we were religious, we were nuts? So there is something very important, not just about Judson knowing who its community is. There's also something very important about higher education and it doing the work of opening hearts and minds. There's something very important about churches doing the work of opening hearts and minds. In case you didn't notice, we had another shooting this week. In the last 50 years, there have been 90 mass shootings in the United States of America. Even though we have just 5% of the world's population, almost 1/3 of the world's mass shootings occurred here in these United States during that time period. A study by Adam Lankford called Mass Shooters, Firearms, and Social Strains, a global analysis of an exceptionally American problem, tells you a lot you don't want to know about who we are as people. If the community ministry movement or the institutional church movement or the university movement of higher education is to be successful, It will heal the violence that seems to be erupting all over this country. We haven't had a mass shooting here yet, she said cynically. Is that success? If we do not get a hold of a more beautiful spiritual narrative for the American people, we'll continue to excel at mass shooters, firearms, and social strain. So, if you didn't want a sermon about somebody else's life, like Judson's or NYU's today, let me boil this down very quickly. If you're looking inside too much, look outside. If you're looking outside too much, look inside. Learn how to circle your thoughts so that you need not be afraid of the future and can be a constant repairer and restorer of the breach. Amen.